You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja.
We love the herb.
It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, November 2nd, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the program. I'm so glad to have you here. Congratulations to my friend Dean Becker out there in the radio world and all my other fans living in the Houston area for your victory in the Game 7 of the World Series, the only baseball game I watch all year. That's right, folks. I only watch Game 7 of the World Series. What's that, you say? They don't always have a Game 7? Exactly. So, it was interesting to watch that, but congratulations. I know my friend Dean Becker will be excited about that. He was rooting for the Stros when I saw him at the Drug Policy Reform Conference in Atlanta. So, glad that came your way, Dean. I hope you're having some fun. Coming up on today's show, we've got an extended interview live here in the studio, but it was recorded earlier, but it was recorded today, so it's damn near live, with our friend David Rines from the Marijuana Business Association. You may remember MGBA from some of our events that we covered up here in the Pacific Northwest. Well, David's now moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, and he's got a tale to tell about the cannabis industry down there in Las Vegas and how the Vegas cannabis scene is mainstreaming cannabis to a whole new audience of people, tourists and travelers and folks that aren't normally in the 420 set. So it's an interesting discussion. That's coming up in our Southwest Cannabis Chronicle. Also on the show today in What in the News, we are going to take a look at some of these reports that we're getting out about the opioid overdose crisis, and we'll dig into that a little deeper in What in the News today. Also on the program, we'll have time for a radical rant, and I just saw the news coming from Rolling Stone that Corey Feldman has named actor John Grissom from the 1980s movies License to Drive, and I forget the other one. Two movies he and Corey Haim, the late Corey Haim, were in. They were known as the two Coreys back in the day, the child actors. And, of course, Corey Feldman has been alleging pedophilia going on in Hollywood for a long time, and now he's named John Grissom, an actor in that movie, as being his abuser.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, November 2nd, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. Michigan Live reports that less than 2 months after the Michigan Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation declared medical marijuana shops open after December 15th could face an impediment to licensure, it reversed its stance. Quote, through emergency rules, the Bureau and Board will not consider a medical marijuana facility's prior operation as an impediment to licensure as long as the applicant documents approval from their municipality in their application, said BMMR Director Andrew Bisbo in a press release. Currently, dispensaries are operating in a legal gray area. The legislature, under a 2016 law, created the BMMR and the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board to license medical marijuana facilities like dispensaries and grow operations, bringing them into the light. The idea of penalizing currently operating dispensaries in the licensure process first came up in August when the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board member Don Bailey moved to have all dispensaries shut down if they wanted to be considered for licensure. Colorado aims to establish a state law enforcement unit dedicated to investigating and ideally eradicating illegal marijuana grow operations that have cropped up throughout the state, says a story in The Cannabist. Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper's $28.7 billion budget proposal for the 2018-19 fiscal year included the allocation of more than $1.2 billion of marijuana tax revenue toward the assembly of a task force within the Colorado Bureau of Investigation that would investigate black market marijuana operations across Colorado. Earlier this year, the state enacted 2 laws that ratcheted down home grow caps in residences to 12 plants from 99 plants and established a $6 million fund to help reimburse law enforcement's operations efforts to curb illegal activity. If approved, the $1.2 million from the marijuana tax cash fund would allow for 8 new hires at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for the task force, 6 investigators, a supervisor, and an administrative official, said Mark Bolton, senior deputy legal counsel and marijuana advisor to Governor Hickenlooper. With permanent regulations still awaiting legislative approval, the Nevada Tax Commission voted Wednesday to extend the existing emergency regulations allowing recreational marijuana licensing and sales for another 120 days. The existing emergency regulations were set to expire Wednesday, according to the Nevada appeal. In accordance with the Supreme Court order issued October 20th, the extended regulations state that new applications to distribute pot can only be issued to licensed liquor wholesalers. That requirement is laid out in the voter-approved legislation making recreational marijuana use legal in Nevada, giving liquor distributors exclusive rights to distribution for the first 18 months of recreational sales. But the regulations also adopt the High Court's unanimous order existing distributing licenses to recreational licensees on or before September 14th will remain in effect for the full year from the date they were issued. As of September, there were 31 licenses issued to distributors. The first legal crop of medical marijuana in the Austin area is being planted after a local company received its license to grow and process and sell it in Texas, reports the Austin American-Statesman. But only patients suffering from a rare form of epilepsy will be eligible to buy and use the finished product, such as tablets, tinctures, or skin patches, because of the state's restrictive medical cannabis law. Compassionate Cultivation, which has retrofitted a 7,200-square-foot warehouse in Menchaca with customized cannabis growing and processing equipment, started planting seeds after receiving the license Tuesday from the Texas Department of Public Safety. Normal reports that a new poll of U.S. service veterans released today that was conducted by the American Legion and presented on Capitol Hill shows 1 in 5 veterans self-reported using marijuana to alleviate a medical or physical condition. Flanked by lawmakers including Representatives Tim Waltz, Mark Takano, Julia Brownlee, and Matt Gaetz, veterans presented their own personal stories of the efficacy of marijuana as a therapeutic treatment for a litany of conditions. Other notable data points revealed among veterans and views of medical marijuana: 81% support federally legal treatment, including 88% of conservatives and 90% of liberals, but only 40% of respondents live in states where medical cannabis is legal. Under age 30, a statistically remarkable 100% of the veterans support federally legal medical cannabis. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, November 2nd, 2017.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you appreciate my full-time dedication to reporting and analyzing the news about cannabis, consider becoming a patron of the show. For just $4.20 per month, you'll help keep my live stream and podcast free while earning yourself your own private ad-free podcast link for the show, as well as links to the supporting articles and data. For a $9.99 VIP subscription, you'll get all that plus my exclusive research, data tables, and graphics. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button today.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
We've turned the corner on drug addiction in the United States. Drug addiction in the United States is under control.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
People should say no to drug use.
It's really, really easy.
Adding more gasoline to the fire.
Lackadaisical.
Really tough, really big, really great
to infect and rot our nation from within.
Dangerous gateway drugs.
We don't need to be legalizing marijuana.
To build and grow a stronger, healthier, and drug-free society.
In the news.
All right, today in What in the News, I want to focus on the second story from our Cannabis Headline News, and that is the proposal for a $1.2 million marijuana tax-funded marijuana eradication team. This is out of Colorado. The Cannabist had the story. Hickenlooper's $28.7 billion budget has $1.2 million allocated for the hiring of 8 new officers to work in the Colorado Bureau of Investigation to investigate black market marijuana operations across Colorado. Right? So we're going to sell weed in the dispensary, sell weed in the pot shops, take some tax money from that, and then go bust people that are trying to grow it illegally. Now, I'm of two minds of this. Number one, nobody should ever go to jail for the growing of a cannabis plant. But number two, if you are going to have legal weed, you've got to enforce the laws, right? The people that are paying the thousands of dollars for these dispensary licenses and for the security cameras and paying their taxes and following all the rules shouldn't be forced to compete with people that aren't following the rules. So you've got to have some sort of enforcement mechanism here. And the governor is complaining that there's just not enough money right now within law enforcement to be able to fund these eradication efforts. Now, it does make you think, though, why we need the eradication efforts in the first place. And that, of course, is due to the continuing prohibition and overregulation of cannabis. And let's think back to the end of alcohol prohibition, right? At the end of alcohol prohibition, there were certainly bootleggers, right? There were people that were making money by illegal manufacture of liquor. Some of them were importing it. And here's, one of the differences is that so much of alcohol prohibition was imported from Canada that once it became legal in the United States, that cross-border traffic in import wasn't as necessary. The same thing you might say here with the United States is a decrease in the Mexican cartels and the amount of market share they're getting with their Mexican brickweed across the border now that we have legal access in many of the states. At least 1 out of 5 Americans live somewhere where they've got legal access to some really good domestic cannabis. But when we ended alcohol prohibition, there's an interesting article that I happened upon in a website called VinePair. And it's it's a drinking culture sort of website that asks the questions, were bootleggers released when prohibition ended? And this is kind of an interesting concept that we're dealing with here in marijuana legalization, is we're saying, hey, now that it's legal, we should let the pot POWs go. We should, people that were selling bags before should be able to get out of jail. And we enshrined that into California's Prop 64. That became a major selling point of that legalization is the retroactive expungement for people's crimes. Here in Oregon, we have a process. It's not automatic, but there's a pretty easy process you can go through to have previous crimes expunged. Did that happen when we ended alcohol prohibition, when we passed the 21st Amendment? Well, according to Ruth Engs, a professor of applied health science at Indiana University, no, we didn't. We didn't have an expungement or a release for the bootleggers who got caught during that 13 years of prohibition. Engs says, quote, few individuals were released after prohibition was repealed. They had illegally manufactured alcohol when it was illegal. And they could request pardons, but there's no evidence that there was a major amount of pardons that were granted for previous bootleggers. In fact, in some states, they still had temperance laws, right? So even after we repealed alcohol prohibition from the Constitution, repealed it at the federal level, that didn't commandeer the states into making their alcohol legal. Michigan still had some laws that was life terms for 3 strikes of even a small amount of alcohol. And another problem that you get when you talk about freeing the pot POWs, or back in the day freeing the alcohol prohibition POWs, is a lot of times these convictions get wrapped up in other convictions. It's not just getting caught for selling a baggie of weed. You end up with cross-border charges. You get up with conspiracy charges. You end up with various gun crimes that get added on And this is where it gets a little difficult when we talk about the licensing and the expungement and the release when it comes to people that have been previously convicted. Because certainly I think we're getting to a point in our country where you could turn to someone and say, hey, this guy, he was caught with a couple baggies of weed. He didn't really hurt anybody, right? He was no kingpin. He was just a street level dealer. He shouldn't be denied student loans or denied job opportunities or denied housing or security clearances because back in the day he got caught with a couple baggies of weed and now that's legal. You can make that argument really easily to most people. Just about anywhere, any age, any political persuasion. But if you throw a gun in the mix, it becomes a much tougher argument. If the guy was caught and convicted of, selling weed and use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, then it's harder to get people to think, well, he ought to be let go because now he's the violent criminal. We have this all the time. We talk about, the non-violent drug offenses. And what we don't understand sometimes when we say that is that when someone's caught with a drug and a weapon, particularly a gun, it's considered a violent drug offense, whether they use that gun or knife or anything or not. And I'm sorry, if you're dealing weed on the streets, packing heat is part of the uniform, right? Because it's illegal, you can't call the cops. Because it's illegal, you can't have a storefront with a locking gate and some security cameras. Because it's illegal, you have to carry a gun. So this is kind of a catch-22 for the weed dealer. Okay, weed's legal now. As long as you've got a non-violent conviction, will allow you to be, you carried a gun like everybody else who got a conviction. Sorry, you can't get into the business now? We need to really distinguish when we start talking about these crimes. Was someone aggressively violent? Were they initiating violence? See, if somebody got caught, even if a guy was convicted of being a weed dealer and he discharged his gun, I'd still want to know what happened. Was he being robbed at the time? Were other dealers trying to harm him at the time? Was he acting in self-defense? Or was this an aggressive, gang-affiliated, I'm going to shoot you, to get you off my turf kind of a thing? By automatically associating violent criminal with the mere possession of a weapon, we are just throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. We're getting rid of many people who, aside from just having the gun on them, were just regular old weed dealers, just normal folks that deserve a chance to get involved into this movement, into this market. But to the broader point of Hickenlooper and this $1.2 million to eradicate weed, the reason that has to happen is because prohibition still exists. This is the sad, cruel tragedy of legalizing marijuana is we can't wave a magic wand and have it instantly legal everywhere, right? Colorado's legalized an ounce of it and 12 plants of it. But Chicago, it's still illegal as hell. So in Chicago, they can get a lot of money for it. So there's always going to be some sort of black market activity, some sort of clandestine, surreptitious cultivation of cannabis and distribution to the places where it's prohibited. The reason Hickenlooper needs to take $1.2 million worth of Colorado tax money to try to eradicate illegal grows is because it's still profitable to have illegal grows. I don't know how long it's going to take these politicians and policymakers to understand you can't repeal the law of supply and demand. So long as there is an illicit demand for cannabis, there will be an illicit supply of cannabis. If you're worried about the black market, the only thing, it's not even number one, it's the only thing you can do to get rid of a black market is to make it unprofitable by making the legit market kick its ass. And I'm sorry, if you're selling, $15 gram buds in the dispensaries, you're not going to kick the black market's ass. It will always outcompete you. Lower the taxes, lower the regulations, increase the production, crash the price, and then your black market goes away. Illegal! Exactly what I was saying. All right, folks, it's 20 after the hour, 4:20 back in my home time zone in Boise, Idaho. Go Big Blue! Boise State takes on Nevada tomorrow on the Blue. No, Saturday on the Blue. No, we're actually playing on a Saturday for once. What do you know? Hey, we'll be right back with David Rhines from the MJBA. Stick around. If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the gay agenda, only with better music.
And now, in the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Marijuana Agenda presents this anti-drug public service announcement.
Oh, hey everybody, it's me, Mr. Bill. Hey! And you know, when you're in the entertainment business, you have to be traveling coast to coast all the time.
Say, Mr. Bill, you've got a long trip ahead of you. You'll need something to help keep you awake.
Well, I've been really trying to cut down on my coffee lately.
Then how about some drugs?
Oh, no! Drugs are bad, and you kids out there should never, ever use them.
Oh, come on, try some. So remember, kids, say,
oh, no!
To drugs.
To combat this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Marijuana Agenda every weekday at mjagenda.com. Hi, I'm Russ Belville. Join me as I cover the Marijuana Agenda at the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference the weekend of November 18th and 19th in beautiful Ashland, Oregon. The OMBC is Oregon's biggest and longest-running conference dedicated to the cannabis industry and marijuana activism. You'll hear an extended interview with influential State Senator Floyd Przansky, a VIP reception and keynote address from the legendary Henry Rollins, and a free after-party featuring music from Hieroglyphics and Souls of Mischief. Plus, you'll get information from 40 industry exhibitor booths and be able to question members of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission regarding cannabis issues they'll be ruling on. Visit OregonMBC.com to learn more and book your tickets now. That's OregonMBC.com for the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference. We'll see you there.
Welcome to the Southwest Cannabis Chronicle. Today, we catch you up on the latest news and speak with an expert from the sunny southwestern region of America. From the Lone Star State all the way to the islands of Hawaii, including the evolution of consumer cannabis in Las Vegas and the rest of Nevada. Grab your sunscreen and drink plenty of fluids. It's time for the Southwest Cannabis Chronicle.
Welcome to another edition of the Southwest Cannabis Chronicle. I'm Russ Belville, and today we take a look at one of the newly legal states and how it's ramping up for its recreational cannabis market, the state of Nevada. And joining us on the program today, we have a longtime friend of the show in its various incarnations and a fellow former Pacific Northwester who's now in Las Vegas. It's David Rhines. David, welcome to the show.
Russ, thank you very much for having me. Great to be here.
Great to have you back. Tell me which and how many hats are you wearing now? Is it MJBA?
Yeah, gosh, when you're in legal cannabis, you have to wear multiple hats because you have to get multiple revenue streams. You and I were talking about it this morning. We have to juggle a lot of responsibilities on our way to creating a viable workplace for folks like us. I run the MJBA, which represents hundreds of legal cannabis businesses now all across the country, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Nevada, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts. Our movement is expanding. I also run, as a platform for communication, MJ Headline News and MJ News Network. So that keeps me full time. As one of the exciting things about having done this 5 years is that we've got mainstream interest in cannabis. I think that's the story about Las Vegas, really.
Yeah. Is how it's bringing in people, because when the movement started in Washington and Colorado, but it seemed to be people that were already entrenched within marijuana.
That's right. So it started as what I would say concentric circles of evolution. It started with those activists. This was always a political movement, even before it was medical. So that's people kind of lose that.
Going back to normal in the 70s.
Going back in the 70s, it was a human rights issue. An offshoot. Keith Stroup, started as a Nader Raider, really as kind of as a civil right, we ought to be able to have our own cannabis and not be imperiled by legal hurdles. So that was really the original movement. Then you got the patients on top of that, what I would call the patient activists. Then in the initial legalization, you got the initial entrepreneurs, the initial licensees in Washington and Colorado. Now we're two national elections into legalization, right? So we've got all kinds of folks from Maine to New Jersey talking about cannabis. We've got mainstream politicians. And for the first time, you've got real mainstream consumer interest with things like CBD, really not only sweeping the nation, but the world markets.
Part of the consumer interest when I think of Nevada is, number one, the lack of home grow. If you live any farther or closer than 25 miles.
Which puts you out in the desert.
Right, yeah. So it reminds me of Breaking Bad. You got to have your own little RV and you drive it out in the Nevada desert and grow your weed. And then the $600 public consumption misdemeanor that still exists, or that is
so
wow.
But the movement is iterative. Evolution comes in waves. Listen, it was not too long ago when out in the desert you were greeted by a billboard sign that said seed or a stem, 20 years, trafficking life, do not gamble in Nevada, right? So there was a zero tolerance. Today you've got mainstream cannabis stores on the Strip. You have some of the largest rec stores in the world in Las Vegas, and they are selling some pretty fine cannabis there. Now, it's expensive, and the selection is not as wide as we see in Washington State or in Colorado, but it's new, and as of July 1, we are really cranking on sales. They have generated millions of dollars, more than $4 million in new tax revenues, probably closer to 6 at this point every day. And with 43 million consumers traveling to Las Vegas as their playground, legal cannabis is a nice addition to gambling and shows and dining and alcohol.
Yeah, I would think that as compared to it's not as if there's nothing to go see and do in Seattle or Denver or Portland, but if you're going there, weed is going to kind of factor into your decision as a tourist. Perhaps you're more of a 420 type person. Whereas Las Vegas, there's people going there for conventions that have weed is the farthest thing from their world, and they're going to be confronted with, hey, it's a reality.
Well, but here's the thing, Russ, and you and I live inside those. We were talking about concentric circles,
the bubbles.
So we came into the early concentric circles, you before me. And so everything we see and do is tainted or flavored with cannabis, right?
Yeah.
But what we don't realize is that for the majority of Americans,
yeah, 88%
cannabis is a part of their life. They have either smoked it or someone in their family smokes it or they've had experience with it. And there's no big deal. And many of them are intrigued with things like vape, are intrigued with things like edibles, right? They don't want to smoke. They don't want to smell like Cheech and Chong as they go into the classroom or they go into the shopping mall. But if they could take an edible or a tincture or a patch, they certainly would and will. And so that's really what you're seeing in places like Las Vegas. These are folks with money. These are folks who are enjoying the full spectrum of entertainment options and are including cannabis in that. So it's a real normalization. I think Las Vegas represents the mainstreaming of cannabis, the commercialization of cannabis. And while some of those in the inner circle, that inner sanctum of, hey, wasn't it cool and we were the cool kids club and it was only those of us who were out in the parking lot behind the dumpster, yeah, that's nostalgic, right? But mainstream comes with us the notion that there is equal rights and that there are folks along the spectrum who may not agree with you politically, who may not be in the same music clubs or social clubs that you are, but they also enjoy the benefits of legal cannabis.
So now, as you had mentioned, we're on our third wave of states, and we've doubled each time, 2, 4, 8, we're up to it. In this third wave, are you seeing the regulators and the entrepreneurs learning their lessons from the first set of states, or are some of them making the same dumb mistakes?
Well, of course, we are humans and we are doomed to repeat the same mistakes ad infinitum. That's just our existential mission in life, or crisis, as it were. But no, the reality is that that's why the MJBA and myself have decamped from the Pacific Northwest that I love and have spent, the better part of a decade, fighting the good fight and making great friends. But this is where the movement needs us. No one's from Las Vegas, or very few are. And so we have an opportunity. It's a small market, but it's a powerful one that touches all 50 states and indeed the rest of the world. And so by being there and being part of that, we can help shape policy. No, there is a continuum that every market goes through. You talked about over-regulation. You talked about over-taxation. LV and Nevada have certainly struggled with things like distribution, where at first there was a monopoly by the alcohol distributors, and it was a way to sort of bring them into the fold, right, in a tightly controlled market. And yet they weren't able to do it because they didn't have the benefit and knowledge of this. And it's a fragmented market, right? Prohibition brings with it the added expense and challenge of fragmentation. It means that every state has to build its own system. You cannot have economies of scale. You cannot have the benefit of building a brand market, that goes nationally. You have to, in every market, be aware of the legal constraints, the compliance issues, what you can do on shelves, what you can sell, how you can talk about your product, how you can market that product. And you've seen that challenge with things like CBD, right, which we think was legal in all 50 states, according to some banners I read. And yet now we see the FDA coming down and talking to some serious players about making medical claims, right? The Stanley brothers would say, hey, this is anecdotal, but you cannot, it's like organic, right? You cannot use federal terminology without federal permission and certification.
That's correct. And another aspect of this that you had mentioned, and I want to revisit, is how the people out there, I always say, the fastest way that you could get cannabis legalized in your state, if it's not already, is to give your grandma some cannabis salve. And these alternative methods of being able to, because they are curious, they are interested, some of them at this point, but I always say they don't hate pot, they hate potheads. They don't want to be associated with the culture or the smell or
that's
the
right.
stigma.
That's exactly right, and that's the last vestiges of prohibition is cultural. It's this notion that, hey, you, Russ, might be okay as a pot smoker, but the rest of them are dirty hippies. My mom, who supports my legalization efforts dearly as only a mother could of a son's efforts, and yet she warns me sometimes, just stay away from the dopers, Dave.
The dopers.
Yeah, the dopers. And I say, well, Mom, I'm probably in most circles considered a doper.
I'm probably the dopiest.
Yeah. And she says, no, because you're so well groomed and you're a real person, and so I think it's that cultural normalization that really is our big challenge. And yes, the fastest growing industry, to answer your question, segment of the industry is in these non-smokables. It's in the medicinal, and that comes in every form. I mean, you're seeing not just pharmaceuticals and those are coming onto the market in a rapid fashion, but you're seeing nutraceuticals, which include things like salves and tinctures and transdermal patches and gels. You're seeing suppositories. You're seeing sexual aids. And the fastest growing demographic for cannabis consumption is that female over 55. She's buying Kush creams, which are fabulous products, by the way. She is consuming Mary's medicinals. She's and she's one of those folks that is not culturally a cannabis consumer. They're what the Fresh Toast calls the canna curious. Right? Folks who lead normal lives and yet are very interested and would certainly eat an edible as a dessert at a party, just like they would have a glass of wine or, something else at a party as part of entertainment. And so they're very interested in those products. Now, part of the challenge and what I liked in Nevada and Las Vegas is doing it very well compared to Portland. My experience here, I told you as I went to a couple of shops yesterday, is that Portland is still a dispensary model, right? I'm still walking in, I'm still getting carded, I'm still feeling like I'm a methadone user.
Yeah.
Right? And they got to call me in and, not all of us can be in one room because, you get 5 or 10 pot smokers in a room and, who knows what might happen. Whereas I can have a super liquor store filled with hundreds of people loading up their cart with 151 and no problem, man. We'll take your credit card and help you out to your van.
Yeah.
Right? And give you a to-go cup. So it's a real different experience. In Vegas, I'm feeling, in some of the stores, right, a sense now of merchandising, a sense of productization, a sense of customer service. I'm on a couple of affinity programs. There's softwares like Baker out there where you come in and you type in your code and they know what you've purchased before and they'll give you a discount the more that you purchase as a patient. And so those things are like normalization, right? That's like going in and using your CVS card.
Yeah.
Not meeting me in the back and going, hey, man, here's a baggie, and I don't know what it weighs.
Let me get my little gold hanging scale out.
The hanging ones, because they were really
accurate as hell. Another aspect of Nevada's legalization was written into it. We mentioned it as well. Was the distributors, the alcohol distributors were written in as a monopoly. That's still got some court battles to go over it. But the idea was, like you mentioned, let's buy off in a sense or preempt any opposition from the alcohol industry, which is a big political player in most states, but in Nevada especially, given gaming and casinos.
Right. That's right.
And that's another industry that's unique in Nevada is the casino industry. And we know Sheldon Adelson, who's the guy behind the Sands, and I think one of the other properties out there, donated millions to try to stop legalization from happening, succeeded in Arizona.
Bought the newspaper.
Bought the Las Vegas Review-Journal, which promptly switched its views on marijuana.
Interestingly enough.
Wasn't it? Yeah. So these are at play in Nevada like they aren't in any other state. I think there's some good news. We saw the Constellation Brands with the Corona getting involved.
Exactly
with
right.
Canadian.
And that's up in Canada.
Yeah.
That's
so
right,
are we going to see alcohol is alcohol deciding where it's going to sit on these sidelines?
So again, from my perspective, everything happens in waves. This is part of Canifest Destiny, meaning that, in Manifest Destiny, we took our country from east to west as our national right, and now we're taking legalization from the West Coast to the East Coast. That wave is unstoppable. It is inevitable. And at this point, it is crescendoing in places like Nevada. So I think that it's not a question of if, it's a question of how and when. And right now we're figuring out, well, how best to integrate cannabis into a society that is pro alcohol and no more demonstration nakedly than in Vegas, right? And so, again, Nevada for me represents that place where America plays, where indeed the world looks at how America plays, and it highlights those things that, hey, sex and alcohol and glamour and conspicuous consumption, right? That has been those are the four horsemen of capitalism that are driving, our culture. And now we're integrating, cannabis. And up to this point, it's been, no, we can't let them in with the horsemen because they'll lead the horses off the path and people won't gamble and drink and cavort the way that they should in the playground, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're realizing is that that's not true, that actually those people who have been coming to Vegas are cannabis consumers, just like your neighbor is a cannabis consumer and your boss and your colleague. It's all of us. And so we're figuring out, how does that work? The reality is it does cut into your budget. Right, it's an economic thing, and when you have $100 to spend a night on partying, I'm going to spend $100 on alcohol, or I'm going to buy an eighth of weed and twist up a few J's, and that will be my entertainment, along with gambling. So it's really share of market, and so those folks are figuring out how do they get paid, how does that integrate. So you've seen the Gaming Commission encourage, and in fact, it's not a hard rule, but essentially the change in policy from last year's MJ BizCon is that none of the casinos are welcoming marijuana events, that all marijuana events have to be in non-casino properties. And I think in part of that, it's putting pressure on the federal government. It's putting pressure on the insurance companies. It's putting pressure on all those mechanisms to figure it out. It's putting pressure on dollars. I mean, the number of dollars that are coming in and will go through those marijuana companies in Nevada is just unbelievable in a handful of folks. So that shapes policy. And it is all about jobs and opportunity and market development. But you just opened this past week, before I came out here, the largest rec store in the world. It's an Indian-owned entity in North Las Vegas. It's enormous. I mean, it's like a Costco for weed,
Amazing. So Las Vegas, Nevada is what we're talking about. We're here with David Rines from the MJBA. And, of course, the MJ Biz Conference is coming up soon. What are the dates on that?
That's like the 15th, 16th, and 17th. And this year it's going to be at the Convention Center.
And it's by far the biggest expo, isn't it?
It is. It's the, there's so many conventions, and MJBA is part of so many. We're not officially a part of the MJ BizCon. However, we have to be part of the scene because everybody in cannabis is there. It's really for two reasons. One, everybody's cropped out. So, it's Croptober is over and now it's time to party a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it's Vegas, baby. So it's less about the programming, which, or the exhibitors and, hey, there's another extraction machine or something like that. The reality is that you want to hang out with folks and have a social time and do a little business and make a little difference. So, it's going to be fun. There's lots of parties. I'll be going to the Dope Magazine Golden Ticket Party. So David Tran gave me my golden ticket. There's the Sensi party out there. There's the Jack Herrera Cup out there. There are a number of events that will make the scene. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Fantastic. And, I'll have to check and see if I can find me a cheap flight to Vegas to catch that. That'd be a lot of fun to hang out. David Rines, MJBA, let's give folks all the contact information they need.
Yeah, so the first place, we're all about three things. We're about get informed, man, get connected, build your professional network, and then through that, find and explore your opportunity. So I would suggest that number one, what we want to try to do is go to mjnewsnetwork.com. Start reading the news, start figuring it out. Listen to your show every day. I certainly do. I think that it's such a dynamic industry. There's so much news every single day. I mean, look, you were talking yesterday about Chris Christie and the buffoons, Jeff Sessions, making an idiot of himself yet again. These are contemporary things. These are things that we can influence, and indeed you do influence it. So go to mjba.net, join, find a meetup.com. I mean, I'm doing a meetup today here in Portland. I'm in Portland today. Staying at Delta 9 House, which is really cool.
Awesome.
So if you come to Portland, you got to stay at Delta 9 House. It's unbelievable. The chickens are super cool. But we're going to be talking about safety and the cannabis workplace. I got Farmer Tom Lauerman coming. I've got Norm Ives from Mosaic Insurance. I've got Mike Stanley from Oxark. I've got Sally Koch from Indy Safety. I got Alex Wheatley from Fisher Phillips. It's at Fisher Phillips. So you got large school insurance companies, legal companies, OSHA compliant companies, the federal government, and farmers all working together to figure out what's a good place to work, what are the challenges of carpal tunnels, or what kind of equipment should we be using? What about off-gassing? There's a lot of consideration. We're building a whole new industry here, and it's not just about are we good people or bad people. Hey, we got real serious work to do. So get involved, folks. We need all of you.
Thanks, David Rines, for stopping in with us, and good luck and enjoy the meetup.
Thank you, Russ. Really appreciate it, brother.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJAgenda.com.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you're a cannabis brand looking to build trust and awareness within the community, consider becoming a sponsor of this program. Your message will be seen and heard by the most dedicated followers of marijuana policy reform, who are loyal and supportive of those brands that give back to the community. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button to learn how your brand can also be featured in my live nationwide appearances. Thank you for your support.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
This is high purity THC content marijuana, and it's not a healthy substance.
Okay, maybe you're a little high. After 5 years of legal marijuana in Colorado and Washington, both states have shown no increase in teen use of marijuana and decreases in marijuana DUI arrests, while generating tens of thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions in tax revenue. Legalization is no longer a theory. It's a proven public policy benefit. Tell your elected officials it's time to end adult marijuana prohibition.
The International Cannabis Business Conference is headed to Hawaii. Get your tickets now for the year's best cannabis industry island retreat this December 1st through 3rd. Kauai Grand Hyatt hosts the 3-day ICBC, which begins with a VIP reception featuring cannabis comedian Doug Benson. The ICBC features exhibitor booths, keynote speeches, and informative panels with industry experts and regulatory officials. Then, when it's all said and done, kick back for the incredible after party with music by reggae legends Morgan Heritage. There's also a singles golf tournament you can play on Monday, sponsored by Leafly Endured Ventures. Log on to internationalcbc.com to get more information and buy your tickets now. Special discount hotel rates are in effect, so act fast. That's internationalcbc.com for the International Cannabis Business Conference. Aloha.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I inhaled.
That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
People don't smoke marijuana.
The story that's rampaging throughout the news lately about the sexual harassment and rape and just the disgusting allegations going on in Hollywood and in politics and just throughout the culture requires me to weigh in on the issue. I just feel like I got to talk about this because the cannabis community isn't immune from these particular issues. Now, if you've been following the story, Harvey Weinstein, the big shot Hollywood producer, has been accused by numerous high-profile actresses and many, many people in Hollywood of engaging in all sorts of inappropriate behavior, sexual harassment, unwanted touching, exposing himself, all this kind of stuff. And we've heard about it from other areas as well. There are numerous allegations out there about the comedian Louis C.K. There are, of course, all of the allegations about the current president, Donald Trump. This is a bipartisan issue. It's not even a partisan issue. I mean, it's just that some men are just disgusting pigs. That's what it is. And it's about power and abuse, and it exists everywhere, including the cannabis community. And so it's a thorny issue to get into because, for one, I think in general, I think there's a bit of a moral panic going on here and a failure to address the issue with some nuance. Okay. And for me, I'm going to use this. I'm going to call it the Spacey Weinstein spectrum. Okay. You got, on the one end, you got Harvey Weinstein, who's been accused of doing all sorts of aggressive and manipulative and coercive acts to various women throughout decades now, time and time again. So we have multiple accusations over a long period of time and behavior that is clearly premeditated and and using his power over people to attack them. Okay. On the other end of the scale, we got what's happened here with Kevin Spacey. The allegations have come out now from actor Anthony Rapp that when he was 14 years old on Broadway, acting on Broadway, he attended a party and ended up at this party that Kevin Spacey was at. And Kevin Spacey was drunk, 26 at the time, and pulled him into a bedroom and got on top of him. And the 14-year-old Anthony Rapp managed to escape and get away. I am not condoning that in any way whatsoever. But let's have some nuance. Let's have some recognition of some difference here between Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey. In the Kevin Spacey's case, we don't have allegations of multiple people over the periods of decades saying this guy used his power. At the time on Broadway, he was just an unknown new actor at the time, so it's not like he had power to abuse. Spacey said he was drunk and doesn't remember it. Anthony Rapp said he was drunk. Now, I'm not saying being drunk dismisses this or excuses it. I do say it puts it on a different level than a guy like Weinstein, presumably sober over the period of decades with multiple people engaging in far worse coercive and power manipulative activities. So I just wanted to get that out there because and the other thing that's bothering me about the Kevin Spacey thing is the reaction of him coming out of the closet, so to speak, saying that he's living his life as a gay man, although there's been rumors about that for years. And the reaction has been, how dare you try to come out of the closet at this time when you've got this sexual assault allegation against a teenager 31 years ago, like you're trying to get out of it. And for years and years and years, gay men have been portrayed as being perpetrators of pedophilia and violence against, assaults against teenagers. And how dare you conflate the two? And I will at least grant that the side by, putting those two things in the same press release, troublesome. However, I also add some nuance to this. How should he have reacted? Because if Kevin Spacey comes out with an apology that says, if what I did to this 14-year-old boy is true, it was a drunken thing and I'm deeply inappropriate and I owe him the biggest apology, period, then what happens? Well, then the media goes, wait, a boy? Are you gay? There's been rumors all this time you've been gay. Are you gay? Because this was a boy back in the, there's a male. Are you gay? Are you gay? So then the story and the reliving it and the triggering of it for Anthony Rapp just gets dragged down in the media longer and longer as they keep asking, are you gay? Are you gay? Are you gay? I think personally, Kevin Spacey said, I did a terrible thing, period. By the way, since y'all won't shut up about it unless I tell you, yes, I'm gay. I don't think he intended to say I'm gay and that excuses me from what I did, or I did what I did because I'm gay. I think they were two independent thoughts there. I think they were in separate paragraphs in the press release even. So I think you got to have a little bit of nuance. Okay, so why am I talking about all this and not weed? Well, this is how it relates to weed. And that is, I feel like now there's like this, the hashtag has been Me Too for women that are saying, yes, I've also experienced sexual harassment. And please, I hope everyone understands that I totally agree that sexual harassment's a problem and needs to be eradicated. And I'm glad this information's coming out. Shouldn't have taken so long to take down Bill Cosby. I don't understand why Louis C.K. is still getting away with it. I'm flummoxed as to how Donald Trump even got elected. Regardless, what's happening now is we're in that moral panic phase, right? Where it's like, okay, we found this big, huge ogre of a Weinstein. Now let's go round up all the Spaceys, right? It seems like there's this act now of like the hashtag Me Too has morphed into him too. Like, let's go get him. Let's go get him. Oh, well, this guy, Andy Dick, back in the day, grabbed my boob. Freaking, it's Andy Dick. that's his shtick, right? But again, I shouldn't condone it. I'm not, but come on. It's like, have some levels of nuance here. How much of a transgression, how long ago are we going to reach back into the archives to pull out to bash someone? Again, I think we need to work on this Weinstein-Spacey scale. If it's on the Weinstein side, if it's someone who's in power, who's been abusing people and continues to abuse people, and we know he's abusing people, and he's getting away with abusing people, then yeah, pitchforks and torches time. Let's end that, what's happening now. But are we going to go back 10 years to where someone was grabbing boobs and asking for massages and committing acts of sexual harassment, but then was caught for it, exposed, and seemingly hasn't continued doing it again? See, let's just name names. I'm talking about the Rob Campea scandal with MPP that happened a few years ago. I forget how long. You can look up the Washington paper. The story was called "The Breast Massage Will Happen." That was a big scandal at the time of the head of the Marijuana Policy Project, having gone home after taking one of the women who worked at MPP home after a party where they were both drunk and did the deed, and then she regretted it the next day and was harassment. He was the director, she was just an employee. I had a friend remark to me today, you can only proposition women who make as much money as you or more. That's the new rule. So I'm wondering how far is this going to go, and is this going to get to that level with the cannabis community? Are we going to drag out the pitchforks and torches and try to excise from all leadership positions anybody who's been around since the 70s, 80s, or 90s, or even the 2000s, who at one time may have done something that now we are completely upset and up in arms against? I'm not saying we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I think we should have some nuance, some perspective, and we should weigh what is the ultimate good. Are we going to do more good for our cause, for our people, for our country, for our society in taking down people who can help us win legalization? It's kind of the Roger Stone question at some level, right? I'm here to talk about it, not necessarily solve the problems. But I do think I'm worried about this heavy need to condemn and this vengefulness that's coming about with this Weinstein scandal. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future. I'll see if I can get some guests on to bring some more perspective to the discussion. But that's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you